Hey, everybody, welcome to Cyborgs Writing. I recently returned from the annual conference for the Association of Business Communication, where I presented some initial thoughts about how to integrate machine rhetorics into our writing classes using structured knowledge bases. And really, for me, it's a way to move a step forward towards thinking about knowledge graphs as a teaching tool or even just structuring content. So I thought I would take a moment this week to record my presentation for those who might be interested in either reviewing it or people who weren't at the conference who might want to watch it. So enjoy. All right, this presentation is called Empowering Students to Shape Tomorrow's AI: Structured Approaches to AI Knowledge Bases in Business Communication. So this is going to briefly show you how AI uses knowledge in case you are unfamiliar with that, and also some ways of talking about that with students, and then also why unstructured knowledge can be a problem, especially as content is scaled, which is something we do in business communication quite a bit. And then how I make students builders and not just users of AI by thinking about how we are building these knowledge bases for it. So connecting your AI to knowledge has been really one of the big changes that have happened this year. You'll notice a lot of tools that allow you to upload your knowledge to an AI tool. So for example, this screenshot here is Claude. You can upload PDFs and Word docs. ChatGPT has the same function. The big talk in town is actually Google Notebook LM, which you could actually upload notes and things like that, and then you can run the AI on top of those files and even create a podcast. And of course, Copilot. If you have the full Copilot for Microsoft, you can run that on top of your email, on top of your OneDrive, and things like that. But you've heard it all before already, probably, that the problem with AI is hallucinations. It can tend to make up things and can give you unreliable results. It has bias because the default training was off the internet, which is certainly biased. And then, of course, it's a black box. We can't actually know exactly how most of these AI models are developing their outputs. Now, being able to give the AI specific knowledge that it can access beyond just its default training is one way to alleviate some of these. But the problem is, as your content scales, these three issues also scale along with it. So the more content that you dump into your AI, the more hallucinations, the more possible bias, and the more you really don't know how it's coming up with its answers. So there has been some research and studies on this so far. In our journal for business communication, we've already noted that the bias grows with data, and so does inaccuracy and trustworthiness. So the bigger your data, the harder it is to control your AI model. Even in computer science, though, they're also looking at this, that they noticed efficiency drops when you have unstructured data or content in your AI. And so really structuring the data or the content that you put into AI is going to help alleviate some of these problems. And what we need is different frameworks for structuring this knowledge or content. Well, in technical writing, we've had frameworks for structuring content for decades. So this is a really good opportunity for us in technical and business communication to leverage some of that expertise and help students better understand how AI works, create better AI models, and develop skills that will be valuable in the future. So here's just an example of unstructured content in action, I think. I mean, I don't really know how Lufthansa created its chatbot, but I could totally see this happening if your content is not structured well. I asked, how can I get a passenger receipt? Which is a specific term they use, and they want me to get this passenger receipt. And the only thing it came up with is, how can I transfer and earn? These are clearly two very different questions, but the AI is somehow making connection between the two. And, I would argue a humorous way. Well, why might this happen with unstructured knowledge? Well, it's important to understand what AI actually does with knowledge. You may not have the knowledge of a computer scientist, for example, but it's important to have some basic knowledge. For example, whenever you're giving knowledge to the AI, it's vectorizing that knowledge. In fact, the knowledge it's functioning on is actually converted to vectors or numerical formats. This is basically just representing words, images, and data as numbers so that it can better capture meaning and relationships across different contexts. The AI then chunks that knowledge for better analysis. It can't actually handle over a certain amount of knowledge. So it's actually got to chunk it into different bits so that it can see some of those patterns. And this does help it make some really interesting connections and generate insights when used appropriately. That's kind of the amazing thing about AI. Well, now what we've been using more recently, particularly when we're uploading knowledge or when it's searching the internet, is what's called retrieval augmentation generation, or you'll see people talking about RAG. RAG is a method to enhance AI output by feeding it specific information you want it to use in place of that default information from the web or whatever the developers have given it. So this is an example of how that works. So you give the AI a specific query, and then it will search the assigned information for anything that connects to that query. So if it's searching the internet, it's going to perform an internet search. If it's searching your documents, it's going to search through your documents. And then it's going to pull that information that it found and put it back into your prompt and then respond to that. So really, it's really doing is searching the knowledge and adding it to your prompt. Now you can tell if it's having trouble finding information, or if it gets its circuits crossed, then it can easily add the wrong information or not add even the best information to that prompt. And you can even see this in the new model of ChatGPT. You can see here, they say that this new model thinks or reasons more, but really all it's doing, you can see here, it says chunk reviewed. That just simply means that it's searched for different chunks of knowledge and it's analyzing those before giving you an output. So I wouldn't necessarily call that reasoning or thinking. It's more just searching different bits of knowledge and making connections, which I suppose is a simple way of describing reasoning, but there's certainly far more to that than just searching for chunks. So really, when you go back to the example that I gave you from Lufthansa, if receipts is clearly in a container called passenger services and earns are in another container or hierarchy called cargo services, those aren't going to crisscross so easily. So the better we can categorize the different chunks or pieces of our content, the more likely the AI is going to find the appropriate information. So this is a quote I really love from Arthur Schopenhauer that illustrates this. It was true in his time, and I think it's even more true with AI. Just as the largest library, badly arranged, is not so useful as a very moderate one that is well arranged, so the greatest amount of knowledge, if not elaborated by our own thoughts, is worth much less than a far smaller volume that is abundantly and repeatedly thought over. I think this is true for the content that we put into the AI. The more that we think over and organize and structure, the better the AI is going to be able to handle that knowledge. You want a smaller organized library, not the bigger disorganized library. So really, this means at the very basic level, chunking the information that you give the AI when you give it knowledge. So instead of like throwing up a bunch of documents, start working on figuring out what are the different chunks or structures in that knowledge and how can you make that clearer to AI. This improves efficiency. It helps the AI better identify patterns and also will help you scale as your content grows. So what does that actually look like, and how do I get students into this idea? Because it actually is it seems complicated, but it can be very basic. So here's what I did for my classes this semester. I started for the first time talking about structure in the first week of class, looking at how all the professional writing that we do, all the content we create has some sort of structure, even if it's implicit in some way. I had students actually go out and find writing in their profession and see if they could figure out what the structure was underneath that writing. And so this is one of the things that they found. It was a social media post on LinkedIn that performed pretty well. And so we looked at this and asked, how would we chunk this post? If we were going to structure this for the AI, what would that structure look like? Well, this is what we came up with. On the social media post, you have a hook or attention getter, an action, something that somebody can do to fulfill the need that you've stated in the hook, a list of usable list items, a method, and then the description of how to use that list, and then a call to action that drives discussion in the comments. You could also add probably an image here. So if I wanted to create the same kind of social media post, I could easily do it using this template. And consequently, AI can more easily do it if you give it this template as well. So here's just an example. So you might just ask the AI, write a LinkedIn post about the top 5 AI tools for students with ADHD. This would be a possible topic that would be the same format as the social media post that we already looked at. As you can see, it's not an exciting post. It's got the basics there. It generally knows what a LinkedIn post is. It knows how to rank things. It picked out random tools. I think most of those are real tools that could be used by students with ADHD. I don't know about the brain focus productivity timer, but the rest I know are real. But if you ask it to write a LinkedIn post about the type 5 AI tools and give it this template, it actually gives you all those critical elements of that post. And I would argue it is much better. Now, it's still finding random things from the internet, random tools that maybe I don't use or I don't agree with that these are the greatest. So that's where, it's making stuff up. It's guessing. It might be a good guess, but it's guessing nonetheless. So what I ask students then to do is to think about how they can go from an unstructured prompt to a structured prompt, because really all the prompt is a small version of what you're trying to build when you're building a content library or a knowledge base or an AI chatbot. I mean, AI chatbot is basically a prompt and knowledge that you give to it. It's not much more complicated than that. So we took the original unstructured prompt, took the different parts of that original prompt and expanded it out into different chunks. And actually, I talk about this more on my blog, Cyborgs Writing. If you want to see some more things about this, I'm not going to dig too deep into it, but you can see that I've actually expanded out what the goal is, who the audience is, what the style is, and what the task is. It's the same prompt as the one that's unstructured. I've just expanded it and chunked it a little bit more. And then I actually added the 5 tools that I actually do use underneath. And that is the knowledge that I'm adding. And so it's going to produce a much more tailored response to my own perspective. So here's the difference that you see between the unstructured and structured prompt. The unstructured prompt, it gives you an okay social media post. The structured one is much better. It's much more expanded and tailored to my context. Not perfect by any means, but certainly a better start. So we can expand this idea actually into a AI tool or chatbot. What if we built an AI that gives personalized recommendations? For example, recommendations to ADHD students on what tools they might try to solve some of their problems. Well, we don't need to start with the big picture. It can be overwhelming to think about, well, how do I build this huge tool and what kind of knowledge do I put into it? You can just start out with a single prompt. So here's the prompt. What's the knowledge? The knowledge is basically what's underneath the 3 hashtags. In fact, that's what I use to signify to the AI, that's the end of the prompt. Here's the knowledge I'm giving you to work with. Now, what we can do is take that knowledge and start scaling it up. What might that look like? It could be making it a longer prompt so we could add more and more knowledge to the prompt. You can turn things into documents. So now you might have a document for every tool. Or you might have one long document with all your tools on it that you can upload to the AI. And that could become databases. So you have lots and lots of documents with tools. And so it can grow and grow and grow. And the more intentional you are about structuring that, the better it's going to work. So for example, we can organize the tools that I've talked about by labeling the descriptions, by writing out some more detailed descriptions that are tailored to students with ADHD, and then clearly labeling those chunks as descriptions. I mean, here I use XML. You don't necessarily need to use that, but it is something that the AI can read easily. Well, you can expand that even more. Well, let's not stop with the descriptions. Let's add key features that are specific to ADHD students. So we're only going to put key features in here that are important to them, and then add tips. So these would be tips specifically, again, for ADHD students, not just for general students. And so now we've created basically a database entry on this specific tool, and we can do this for all the tools in the knowledge base. Now, I used XML, but you don't need to do that. You can use just headings or Markdown, which is a simplified version of HTML markup language. But you could also show students something like this, which is just the headings and the bullets and the bolding. Those are all tools for structuring information. They're not just to make things pretty. They're actually identify to readers and computers what the different parts of this text is and what is the function of each part. This heading says that this has key features, and its purpose is to tell the users what the key features are. So this is a good way to help students start thinking about structuring information, not just for AI, but for humans as well. So now a project in your class could be to create AI tools or chatbots or models that are specifically tailored to these situations. They can start with a prompt, a little bit of knowledge, and then start expanding that knowledge more and more. So these are examples of some topics students have chosen in my class to work with. For example, book reviews. They're developing reviews of books that connect to specific classes offered in our English department. So it could be a chatbot that recommends books just for our English students. Or risk communications, having students build a database of important hurricane information that's backed by research, also accessible to everybody, and specifically tailored for people in Wilmington. That would be an amazing chatbot. Or student hangouts recommendations. So yeah, you can use ChatGPT to find out student hangouts in Wilmington. They'll make some good guesses, but if you want the real perspective from students, have them build the knowledge base that the AI works on, and it'll give much better recommendations, more than likely, because the students know better about where students are hanging out in Wilmington. I would argue this actually helps students attain many of the objectives that we have in writing classes. Teaching students to create structured knowledge not only enhances their understanding of the subject matter. You got to know what the restaurants are. You've got to know what the books are. You got to know what kind of hurricane information people know. You need to know that subject matter, but it also equips them with a modern skill set that's going to be increasingly valuable in today's AI-driven world. So I'll end with this. Let's start thinking about making students builders of AI by using our knowledge, our domain-specific knowledge, and our expertise and students' expertise, and not just make them users of AI. Thank you for your attention. I hope this was useful. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if you have some time. Thank you.